Mysterons, sworn enemies of Earth, possessing the ability to recreate an exact likeness of an object or person. But first, they must destroy. Leading the fight, one man fate has made indestructible. His name, Captain Scarlet.
Hi there, I'm Captain Blue, and I'm going to tell you about Captain Scarlet and the Spectrum Organization and their unending fight against the threat from the Mysterons. You'll also learn some of the secrets of the television series from the people who actually helped create Captain Scarlet and the Mysterons. This is Colonel White's desk. He's the Supreme Commander-in-Chief of Spectrum, but at the moment he's away attending a conference at Spectrum HQ in London. We're on Cloud Base, which floats 45,000 feet above the Earth's surface, and from here, Colonel White controls the whole of the Spectrum operation. But first, let me tell you more about the Mysterons and why they are waging a war of nerves with the people of Earth. It all started when an exploration vehicle on the planet Mars came across an incredible sight.
Well, that about completes our patrol, Captain Black. Once again, nothing to report.
But those signals we monitored at Spectrum, they must have come from somewhere. Let's just take a look over that ridge, and then we'll return to Earth.
Okay, sir. Will you take a look at that?
Spotted. They're getting ready to attack.
They're obviously hostile.
Okay, Lieutenant, let them have it. We'll survey the wreckage, Lieutenant Dean, collect a few samples, and then return to Earth.
I'll go and get my spacesuit. Look at that!
Shut down motors. Maintain radio silence.
Let's get out of here.
No! Wait.
You will be instrumental in avenging the Mysterons. Our first act of retaliation will be to assassinate your world president.
Captain Scarlet was a war story. You know, it was about a battle between the people on Earth and the Mysterons, the aliens on Mars. And so, of course, people today talk about Captain Scarlet being a dark series. Well, I suppose that's right. I mean, anything about war is dark. The interesting thing is that when we first started to make Captain Scarlet and we were preparing and writing the scripts, there was a lot of speculation as to whether there was life on Mars. People had seen through telescopes gashes on the surface, which they thought might be man-made canals. And I remember thinking, well, we've got to be careful, because if we complete this series and then find that there is no life on Mars, and we've been showing aliens coming from Mars, it would ruin the whole idea. So I came up with the idea of making the aliens, the Mysterons, invisible. And then I thought, whatever happens, we can't be shot at.
The Mysterons had become our deadliest enemy, and Captain Black was to be their agent on Earth. Spectrum was given the job of fighting the Mysteron threat, and its first task was to make sure that the world president came to no harm. Captain Scarlet and Captain Brown were assigned to protect him.
Does Colonel White know you're sitting there, Adam?
Paul, good to see you. I was about to explain how you became indestructible, but perhaps you'd like to tell the story.
Well, it all began when Captain Brown and I were on our way to rendezvous with the world president, so we could escort him to the Spectrum Maximum Security Building.
Do you think the president's life really is in danger?
Well, judging by what happened on the Martian expedition, I'd say the Mysterons have the capability of carrying out their threat.
If only we were fighting something we understood, something tangible, something in 3 dimensions.
I know what you mean. We can only hear them over our radios, but I've got a feeling they're with us all the time.
I had been retro-metabolized by the Mysterons. I was now a Mysteron replacement and under their control. I was flying the President to England when Spectrum discovered I could be under Mysteron control, and they ordered me to return to Cloud Base.
Return to base, Captain Scarlet. You heard what they said.
I decided not to obey.
Spectrum, this is your world president speaking.
I kidnapped the world president and drove towards the London car view in a stolen car. Captain Blue was in pursuit.
Destiny Angel, I have joined the M21. I should make contact with Captain Scarlet's car in a few minutes.
You must be crazy. Your escape route is blocked. Why don't you give up now before it's too late for both of us?
Captain Scarlet, this is Captain Black. relaying instructions from the Mysterons. I will again remind you, we must have the world's president alive.
Captain Scarlet is leading his car. He has the president at gunpoint. And they are climbing out of the girder structure at the side of the Sky Park.
SIG.
Captain Blue donned a jetpack, but was under attack from a Spectrum helicopter that had been taken over by the Mysterons.
A42, did you receive my message? Please acknowledge. Destiny Angel, helicopter A42 is firing at me. Must now be considered as hostile.
SIG.
Scarlet, it's either going to be you or me.
I survived the fall because the Mysterons had made me indestructible. But when I recovered, I was no longer under their control and was soon back at work, taking my orders from Spectrum.
We were glad to have you back on our side, Paul. We were determined not to be manipulated by the Mysterons and their war of nerves.
Certainly not, Adam. It's always been obvious who's pulled our strings.
The atmosphere in the studio was very good at that time because we were all young and keen, I think, and it was something new in the way that the puppets were presented on television. We had much smaller heads on the Captain Scarlet film, and it was more difficult working them because from way up on the bridge with 8-foot strings, it was very difficult to turn a little head that was quite minute to us looking down on them.
When we got to Captain Scarlet, all these electronic bits and pieces that we were using were now very much smaller. And so we were able to put the electronic mouth movement in the puppet's chest and drive the mouth by a Bowden cable, which went from the chest up through the neck into the mouth. And this meant that we were able, for the first time, to make the heads correctly proportioned to the bodies. And so in Captain Scarlet, we were producing miniature people, really puppets which looked like human beings.
Trying to walk the puppets, it was really impossible on the Captain Scarlet characters because they look so human that if you don't get the walk looking human, it just doesn't look right.
I've made a lot of puppet films, and as the years rolled by, we've gradually made the puppets do most of the things that we wanted them to do. But walking, there was no way we could ever get a puppet to walk.
We take our orders from Colonel White. Before he joined Spectrum, the Colonel served with the World Navy, where he gained a reputation for having nerves of steel in dangerous situations and for being a fine and fearless leader of men.
Colonel White, XK-3 is in orbit around the moon. Lunar rocket separation in 4 minutes.
Right. Put me in direct contact with Captain Scarlet.
SIG.
This is Colonel White. As the lunar controller has banned personal radios and all other equipment, I'll give you your final instructions now.
Yes, Colonel.
We have reports that a new unauthorized complex is being constructed in the Humboldt Sea on the far side of the moon. This must be investigated.
I have the map reference, sir. We'll do everything possible.
I don't have to tell you how important this assignment is. The future of the world may well be in your hands. Do you all understand? Lieutenant Green?
SIG.
Captain Blue?
SIG.
Captain Scarlet?
SIG.
The Colonel's right-hand man in the control room is Lieutenant Green. He comes from Port of Spain, Trinidad, and is in charge of communications on Cloud Base, but sometimes goes out on missions.
He came with us on one of our most dangerous missions, to the far side of the moon. Our mission was to find and remove the power source from a Mysteron complex before it was blown up by the lunar authorities. But first, we had to find a way in. We've got to knock out that control vehicle.
They're going to attack.
Lieutenant Green, man the missile gun. Look out, Captain Blue. Can you see the control vehicle?
There's so much dust.
There it is. Dead ahead.
You have one chance, Lieutenant. Don't miss.
Do I get a coconut?
If we ever get out of this, Lieutenant, I'll buy you all the coconuts you can eat.
In Captain Scarlet, everything was modelled more to life. We shot more to life. We spent more time lighting, getting light and shade to create moods, more so than we ever did on Thunderbirds or any of the previous series. The minute we got into Scarlet, that's when a lot of things changed. If ever you said to Jerry, "Oh, do you remember when we did that?" Forget it. We're going forward. I don't want to hear what we did. We're doing this series, and it's going to be totally different to the way we worked last time. So let's get into it.
Every time we made a new series, we tried to improve everything. And rightly or wrongly, possibly wrongly, I was always trying to make the puppet shows look like live action shows.
During that period, there was the space race going on between Russia and America. And we used to listen to the live commentaries of, that's coming down. And then, as you see the space race progress, they were copying us, which I found quite amazing. And even to this day, you see the American space shuttle go up. It's not dissimilar to really Fireball XL5, with a bit clipped on,
Captain Ochre, Captain Magenta, Captain Gray, and Dr. Fawn are also based at Cloud Base.
Captain Ochre is American, and his real name is Richard Fraser.
Are you all right?
Yes, I'm okay. Did you manage to get the detector around on that car?
No, there wasn't time. There could be a connection between that saloon and the Mysteron threat. Well, we better tell Captain Scarlet.
3 men have just pulled up. Gray Saloon, license number 101X238.
Keep them talking while I check them out with the Mysteron detector.
SIG. Contact me over the personal receiver. I'll turn the volume right down so they can't overhear.
SIG, Captain Magenta.
Captain Magenta was born in Dublin, and his real name is Patrick Donahue.
What's the trouble, Captain?
Just a routine check, gentlemen. No unauthorized personnel can pass through.
Are you sure?
Captain Gray comes from Chicago, and his real name is Bradley Holden.
I'm in number 3 tracking vehicle. We have a bearing of 023 degrees, 17 minutes. Did you get that, Colonel?
023.17.
I see.
Dr. Fawn comes from Yalumba in Australia and is Supreme Medical Commander of Cloud Base. His real name is Edward Wilkie.
My tests have proved conclusively you have retained the ability of retrometabolism. A bullet will make you bleed, you will feel the pain, but after a few hours, even a fatal wound will heal completely. Captain Scarlet, you are still virtually indestructible.
Having the different colours, for the names of the characters in Captain Scarlet really came about because every time I started a new series, I was determined to make it different. And one way of making it different was to give different uniforms and different names. And so I thought of calling the lead Captain Scarlet. Different name, interesting. And then, of course, we came to write in the next character. And hey, presto, Captain Scarlet, well, why not another colour? Yeah, so Captain Blue. And so it went on until we had most of the cast with names that were colours. And then I remember thinking, well, of course, if you put all these colours together, you get white. So the boss man has to be Colonel White. So it wasn't that I woke up one morning and thought, I know what I'm going to do. On this new series, I'm going to give them all names, all different colours, and we'll call it Spectrum. No. It wasn't like that at all. It was a slow process during the pre-production that this came about.
The uniforms which Captain Scarlet and his team wore, I mean, it was wonderful to watch on the screen, the colour of it and the little details. I had to go and get the thin material and the very small buttons and zips, and it was very different from making clothes for adult people.
Our team on Cloudbase is completed by the 5 angels: Destiny, Harmony, Melody, Symphony, and Rhapsody, who make up the deadliest air combat force in the world.
At any one time, there's one angel in her interceptor on the flight deck, and 2 others standing by in the amber room. At the first sign of trouble, Colonel White will give the order for the angels to launch.
Thank you, Captain Scarlet. I understand the situation. Lieutenant.
Yes, sir?
Launch all angels. Get them skyborne, Lieutenant.
Angel 1, immediate launch.
SIG.
Angels 2 and 3, immediate launch.
Spectrum is green.
The music was written by Barry Gray. He just had the knack of writing stuff that, without wishing to be corny, but really got you there. The Thunderbird March was just a wonderful piece of music. And all of his music was very, very descriptive.
Music was such an important part within the series. It really was, and Barry did a super job with his music. The way he could create drama with a nice little bit of orchestral or boom, 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 boom. He worked very, very closely with the sound effects guys. Sound effects played a big part as well. Gunshots, rumbling, vehicles looked and sounded, if they've got good sound behind them, gives them more credibility. But Barry came up with some lovely dramatic music on all the series that he did. To me, he was brilliant. He really was. A really clever guy.
It was always interesting to go to a music session because we used to have orchestras. I mean, this is a children's series. We used to have orchestras between 45 and 85 pieces. Unheard of even, right up to today. And he would get onto the podium and he would take his shirt off and he'd have his little singlet on, his vest, and he'd take the baton and he'd start conducting this massive orchestra. And I know all conductors do this, but he would suddenly tap and stop the orchestra and say, second violin, you played an E flat instead of something. I mean, how anybody could hear one wrong note with that massive orchestra, I could never understand that. But the really impressive thing about Barry was a respect the musicians had for him.
This is the voice of the Mr. We know you can hear us, Earthmen. You will pay for your unprovoked attack on our city. In 1 hour's time, we shall destroy the power plant at Willendorf. Do not try to stop us. Your resistance will be futile. We will be avenged.
Willendorf. That's one of the biggest power plants in the world.
They must be stopped. Willendorf supplies the power for the World Defense Organization. If it's destroyed, the world will be defenseless against alien attack.
There's a Spectrum pursuit vehicle stationed near the airfield 70 miles from Willendorf. Let's get down there.
SIG.
A lot of craft came into Jerry's series. You had the craft because that was your movement again. And Derek Meddings created that, and brilliantly, I might add. Derek, in my opinion, pioneered model special effects, and, well, the proof of the pudding was in the E-Tenement. They did the Bond stuff, he won his Oscars.
Special effects made a huge contribution, and particularly in that day and age, there weren't that many people doing special effects in the way we did them. We were shooting with miniatures, and I remember at the time people like Stanley Kubrick asked me if I would do the special effects on 2001, and I replied that we only did effects for our own productions. Fool that I was. I had no idea how big the picture was going to be. And I know that the units that were shooting James Bond, were looking at our films because our miniatures and special effects were way ahead of anything at the time. And I think it's true to say that today's feature films made in this country and also in America, a lot of the techniques were born from the puppet shows that we made. And indeed, at Pinewood Studios, they still have some of our original equipment, like rolling backgrounds, still in use. So I think Derek made a huge contribution, not only to our films, but also to special effects, period, in the industry.
The times that the ceiling in the studio was alight with Derek, with the explosion, especially when it was a big model stuff. It was incredible. The fire brigade used to come out on the odd occasion.
When we started on Captain Scarlet, I'm sure that everybody, particularly Derek Meddings, thought, OK, new series, now we can make the models look even more real than the last one. But there was no conscious effort, actually, to say we want more realism in this show. It was just the next show got to be better than the last show. It's got to be more believable than the last show.
Turn left here.
SIG.
This road leads directly to the power plant, but we're still 60 miles away. We don't have much time. It's lucky that there was an SPV stationed so close to Willendorf.
Well, thanks to Spectrum's great planning, there always seems to be an SPV based just where you'll need it.
Yes, I'll see to it straight away. Thank you. Goodbye.
Captain Scarlet, Spectrum. Pursuit Vehicle 428 immediately.
Identification, please. Thank you.
Entrez. Can I help you, monsieur?
Captain Scarlet, Spectrum. We want SPV 503.
Uh-huh. And your identification, monsieur? Bon. It is outside, monsieur. In the shack.
Captain Blue of Spectrum. Pursuit vehicle A69, please.
Pass, please. I see you have expert ratings on SPVs. It must be tricky facing backwards and driving by TV monitor.
You get used to it.
You know, we're always being asked why the seats face backwards in an SPV.
I guess it was another great idea from the Spectrum designers.
The SPVs represented one of my big mistakes. At the time when we were planning Captain Scarlet, there was a big move afoot to have all rear-facing seats in airliners, because in the event of a crash landing, then people would be forced into their seats as the plane decelerated, as opposed to being thrown forward and perhaps rupturing their spleen on the safety belt. And so this was all the talk, and I thought, well, I'll be very smart here, and on this futuristic SPV, we'll have the seats facing backwards. And how do they steer? Oh, well, very simple. I thought we'll have a television camera on the front, and that front view will be on a monitor that they're looking at, and we'd flip the picture over so that they were steering the right way, for the vehicle that was travelling the opposite direction. And I was very pleased with myself, but as we started to script the series, we began to realise that the audience was going to say, why are these people facing backwards? And so we started to write in explanations in the scripts. We would stop at a petrol pump and the attendant would say, why do you guys sit, facing the front of the vehicle? And they would say, but, and they'd give this explanation, you see. But then, of course, I realised that not everybody would see that episode. So how many times would we put it in? If we put it in, say, 5 times, it would become boring. And if we only put it in once, a lot of people wouldn't know. And it was something I totally regretted doing.
Colonel White, I've crashed the SPV.
You all right, Captain?
Yes, the rear-facing seat saved me.
We've got less than 15 minutes to get to Willendorf. I'm not sure we're going to make it.
It's going to be a close thing, Adam. But I don't intend to let the Mr. Ons get the better of us. Do you remember when I had to get to Ben Sheba refinery before the Mr. Ons got there and blew it up with a truck full of explosives? I'm not going to make it. I'll have to cut across the desert. I have visual contact with the truck. There are some oil storage tanks about a mile ahead. Can you pinpoint my position?
Those tanks are on the perimeter of the refinery. Time's running out.
Well, it has to be now. I'm going to try and force him off the road to the right, away from the pipeline.
It was a good thing that you're indestructible.
Well, it does mean that I can take more chances than a normal person.
By the way, Paul, We don't seem to be moving. We must be held in some sort of force field.
I don't think so, Adam. I know what the problem is. Dave, could you spin the drum? Thank you. That's better.
In common with all the vehicles that we used in our series, and of course in Captain Scarlet, let's talk about the SPV. We have many shots where it had to be racing along a roadway. Now, the model was probably no more than 9 or 10 inches in length, and we would pull this along the model roadway. We would intentionally paint the roadway with emulsion paint, but we would also include some very small stones so that there were bumps. And when you pulled the model through the shot on a wire, it would bump up and down on these little obstructions. And of course it looked just like a toy, which was not the idea we had in mind at all. And so we, instead of filming at 24 pictures a second, which at the time was the speed the movie cameras used to film, we used to film at 120 pictures a second. Now, when the film was developed and printed, and the next day we took it into the theatre, it was projected at 24 frames a second, and therefore everything was in slow motion. And all these little bounces suddenly became lovely, movements like a real car. In addition to that, we had miniature fans which were mounted under the vehicle, blowing downwards. And these were driven by onboard batteries. And before the shot, we would dust the roadway with fuller's earth. It's rather like talcum powder, but sort of a darker colour. And through the camera, you couldn't see this. But when the vehicle, or in this case, the SPV, when the SPV went along the roadway, the fan would blow the dust up, and there'd be this dust coming out the back. And when it was all finished, I think it used to look pretty real.
When we needed to shoot at high speed, it meant that we always needed to put a great deal more light onto the set in order to still give us the depth of field that we required. We used to pump an awful lot of light onto it, which consequently made the studios extremely hot. And being as at that time I was the flyer, so if that particular sequence required one of the craft to fly in and land, I would be on a sort of diving board above the set, holding on to a strap fixed to the ceiling with one hand and holding the craft with the other hand, and then sort of flying it in, and there would be great cries of "Stop dripping sweat on the model, we can see it."
And to give an example of the amount of light that we used, if we took the model, SPV, and we put it at one end of the little set, and we had a very fine wire connected to it, when the camera wound up to full speed, we would pull it through the shot, and bearing in mind we were shooting in slow motion, we had to pull it through much faster than we wanted it to look on the final result. When it came to the end of the road, and I suppose we're talking about 3 or 4 seconds, the paintwork on the model was smoking.
We've only got 8 minutes left before the bomb goes off and takes the power plant with it. Can't we go any faster?
She won't go any faster. We're already at maximum speed, 200 miles an hour.
Well, if it can be done, then the SPV will do it. It's the best machine there is.
I think Captain Black would agree with that. That's why he stole an SPV to make his getaway from the Culver Atomic Center.
Security break, block D. Seal all exits.
Captain Black had been caught breaking into the atomic center. He'd become radioactive while he was escaping, and so we could trace his position with Geiger counters.
Be with you in a minute, sir. Just fixing this wiring. Hey, what are you doing? What are you trying to do? Hold it! Stop! Help!
Do you remember the wall mark that used to go across? A light would go across a jumper, and it would be the wall mark, and that's where the Mistron rings actually come from.
I saw a design of sorts, I can't remember what it was, going across a girl's chest, for want of a better description, and it followed the contours of her body. And I remember thinking, hey, I haven't seen that before. That's something really clever. And so I went into the studio and I said to my partners, look, I've seen this commercial. It would be a great idea for the Mistrons to signal their presence in this way. One of my partners, the late Reg Hill, suggested using the rings because he thought it was a good shape, that would accentuate the shapes that it was, crossing. And the way we did it wasn't my idea, it was Reg's. He photographed the rings, made a 35mm slide, and put it in a standard stills projector. And then he would pan this across the set, and the Mistron rings would, go over all the furniture along the floor and up on somebody. And it worked brilliantly.
Where is everyone? I don't know. There should be somebody around.
I've been expecting you. You've come for the SPV. That's right. Follow me. It's hidden in a dummy oil storage tank. I'll get the key.
Stay back here with me.
Let's see, here it is.
You knew it was a trap.
I suspected it.
How?
He didn't ask for our identification. I think we'd better take a look around. This is the work of the Misterons.
Captain Black, the Earthmen have erected a roadblock ahead of you. Turn off and go back to the atomic center.
Captain Blue and I found the spot where Captain Black and the SPV had left the road.
Well, it was here.
Right. But it looks like he headed back to the road. Let's get back to the car.
Wait.
What is it?
A medallion. It's Symphony's.
It can't be.
It's Symphony's, I tell you. I gave it to her on her birthday.
You're right. Look. Over there.
Symphony Angel had no right to land. Her orders were to maintain aerial surveillance.
Use your initiative, they say.
I heard that, Lieutenant. Initiative should never clash with discipline.
Captain Black had kidnapped Symphony and forced her into a radioactive chamber at the atomic center.
Prepare to die. The radiation will kill you in 3 minutes. The Misterons also have compassion. I am going to give you
one chance.
Colonel, the SPV has crashed the gates.
Right. Make certain Captain Black is in it, and don't lose him.
Captain Black, you are completely surrounded. Come out with your hands up. But Captain Black had tricked us. He wasn't in the SPV at all. We're coming in. He'd made Symphony drive it from the atomic center, and because she was radioactive too, we thought we were tracking him. Symphony?
Luckily, Symphony wasn't badly hurt, and the radiation had no lasting effect. But we were made to look very foolish.
We can't always win, Adam, but we have to keep fighting the Mr. On threat. We can't let them win the war of nerves, and we can't let them blow up Willendorf.
We've got less than 3 minutes, Paul.
In that case, I'm going in alone.
No, Paul, not again.
You know I'm right, Adam.
Jerry Anderson telephoned me out of the blue. I'd been on an interview program with a man called Pete Murray, who used to do a thing called Open House. And on that I can't remember why I did, but I did a silly impersonation of Cary Grant, because Pete used to know that I did it as a party piece, and he made me do it on this program. And Jerry must have heard it, because he telephoned me and asked me to go in and see him, and he said, I heard you the other day, and I love that. I like that voice you did, and we're doing this new series called Captain Scarlet, and it sounds ideal to me for the part of Captain Scarlet. That's how I got it. I mean, I didn't do anything to get it. I didn't really deserve it, but it's been very nice.
Well, the voice of Captain Blue is my own voice. I didn't have to do any research. I regard my voice as heroic. It's the kind of voice that if you're in an airplane and you hear the captain say, "Good morning, ladies and gentlemen," you feel relaxed. You read your in-flight magazine with authority and relaxation. And so that's essentially the voice I used as Captain Blue.
At the time we recorded the series, and we didn't see the puppets. For some time we didn't see what the puppets looked like. We saw drawings of them, but we didn't actually see the puppets, and we used to just do them as like doing a radio play. The whole gang of us would get together at Denham Studios to do this, but at the time, it just happened that when the recording sessions were set up, I was in Manchester doing Private Lives, a card play, and so Jerry had to fly me down every day during the week from Manchester, early morning, and I would do the recordings, then I'd fly back in time to get on stage. So it was quite an adventure, and pretty exhausting, I may say.
We never saw the scripts until we got actually to the recording studio, and we recorded 2 days a month. And we recorded an episode in the morning, an episode in the afternoon, so that was only 4 episodes a month of the 26. So the first thing you did when you arrived, you got a script handed to you, and you surreptitiously looked through the script to see if your puppet died in that particular episode. You see, because we all suffered from one common fault, all these puppets. That was humanity. We were vulnerable. We could be blown to bits. We could be zapped, shot, smothered, drowned, burned, whatever, except Captain Scarlet. And Francis Matthews, the voice of Captain Scarlet, would come into the session looking very relaxed and cool and confident, and he would be handed his script on a velvet tray, and we always knew that he was back the next week.
I had 2 very tiny children, a 5-year-old and a 4-year-old, 2 boys. And Reg Hill, who was the producer of the series, put on a special showing for them. They were the first children, as far as I know, to see it, because he wanted to find out what children's reactions to it would be, because it was mainly made for children. And they settled down, and it was put on the screen at Jerry's studio. And the film started, this is the voice of the Mr. Ons. And the two eyes came across. And my eldest son screamed and ran terrified from the studio. And Red said, oh my God, what have we done? We've made a series that no children are going to watch, and their parents won't watch them because they'll be too terrified.
But the atmosphere was very, very relaxed in the recording studio. And I must say quite candidly that I feel that this came from the top. The executives, Jerry and Sylvia and Reg and the rest of the executives of Century 21, they created a relaxed atmosphere. Luckily, Symphony wasn't badly hurt, and the radiation had no lasting effect. But we were made to look very foolish.
We can't always win, Adam, but we have to keep fighting the Mr. On threat. We can't let them win the war of nerves, and we can't let them blow up Willendorf.
We've got less than 3 minutes, Paul.
In that case, I'm going in alone.
No, Paul, not again.
You know I'm right, Adam. Captain Blue, I'm inside the control room. I'll look for an explosive device.
SIG, Captain Scarlet. I estimate that you have less than 20 seconds.
I've found the bomb. I'll deal with it.
Paul, there's no time. Get out of there. Get out now. He's done it. He's saved the power plant. Well done, Paul. Captain Scarlet has won another battle in the war of nerves against the Mysterons. Well, I hope you've enjoyed learning something of the work of Spectrum, but there is one thing you must remember. Captain Scarlet is indestructible. You are not. Do not imitate him.
SIG. Spectrum is green.
Well, obviously, at the time that we did it, we thought it was just another of Jerry's puppet series, and that they would, in the fullness of time, disappear and not be seen. But each new generation wants to see them, so they're brand new to every generation, and they just go on.
The timelessness of the series is simply that. Like for Disney, I think he said that there's a new audience for his works every 7 years or 10 years, whatever. And I think that the same holds true for certainly Captain Scarlet and most of Jerry's output. The technical achievements are fine. The same values of good and evil, of excitement and tension and suspense are all there, and those elements never go out of circulation, never go out of demand. And I knew that this would go on. I really did.
You have to remember, in that day and age, repeats hadn't been invented in this country. When a show of mine at that time was shown for the second time, I used to think, what a chintzy lot these broadcasters are. I mean, it's been shown, everybody's seen it. It should be put away in the vault now and, locked up. What are they doing showing it again? So, I mean, that just emphasised the fact that I had absolutely no idea that it would last this length of time. And of course, I think it's wonderful that it has, and I think it's equally wonderful that I have too.
Captain Scarlet. Captain Scarlet. Indestructible Captain Scarlet.